Hi, I'm Tia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you my reading plans for the month of August. So before I started booktube, I used to binge read series. I would find a series that I was interested in and I would read the entire thing in just a few weeks. I don't know how long it would take, but I wouldn't put any other books in between those. And if I did, there was only like one in between each book of the series. But now, since starting booktube, I have become interested in so many more books, and has become harder for me to stick with a series and see it all the way through to the end. And that's really starting to bother me. I wish that I was not in the middle of so many series. So I've decided to dedicate August to reading some sequels, some series that I am in the middle of. So whenever I decided to come up with this list, I started looking through my shelves and Goodreads to see which series I was in the middle of, because there were so many that I couldn't even remember how many there were. And I remembered some on my own, but then just looking through my books, I was like, oh, and oh yeah, I'm in the middle of that one, and oh yeah, I need to read that next book, and oh yeah. It's ridiculous. I don't even know how many series I'm in the middle of because I stopped after I had gathered like 25 books. I know there's no way that I will be able to read all of these in August, but I have a huge stack here to share with you. These are the ones that I need to read, and I'm going to do my best to work my way through as many of them as possible during the month of August. I've decided to deem this my summer of sequels. I know that August is like coming on the end of the summer. Technically it doesn't turn fall until mid-end of September, but whenever we start back to school, I generally just consider that to be the fall. So for me, August is basically the end of the summer. So here's my summer of sequels potential reading list. My top priority is going to be the Anne of Green Gables read-along that I have been hosting this year with Amanda from the Curly Reader. This month in August, we are reading the 8th and final book in the series, and that is Rilla of Ingleside by Ellen Montgomery. This one follows Rilla, who is Anne's youngest daughter, if I remember correctly. I believe she is 15 at the start of this novel. I've heard that this one is a little bit different in tone than the previous books in the series, and I'm really looking forward to reading more about Rilla and finishing up this entire series. I'm not gonna lie, I feel pretty accomplished that we are on our last book. I would love to know down in the comments if you have stuck it out with us and if you are going to be reading Rilla in the month of August as well. Next is a prequel book, and this is the prequel that takes place in the Wallflowers series, which is written by Lisa Kleypas. So I have read all of the other Wallflowers books. There were 4 in the series, and then there was like a Christmas novella that was like 4.5. This one is 0.5. It's the prequel, and it is again the magic. I believe that this follows a sister of one of the male characters from the original series, and these are historical romance books. The original series followed a group of wallflowers who were friends who worked together to find husbands for each other. I believe that this one is like a second chance romance. Like, these characters were romantically involved when they were younger, but then times have like taken them apart from each other, and now they are meeting back up much further in the future. So I'm really looking forward to this. I've always enjoyed Lisa Kleypas's writing. Speaking of Lisa Kleypas, I also need to read the next book in the Travises series by her, and that is Blue-Eyed Devil, I believe, is the second book in the series. And this book is a contemporary series. The first one had romance in it, but I wouldn't say it was a major plot in the book. I don't know. It read more like women's fiction or just a regular contemporary, because it definitely followed the main character's journey more than it followed the romance. But this series focuses around the Travises and other people who are in their lives. So I believe that the Blue-Eyed Devil follows a character from the first book who was sort of a side character in that story. So I'm looking forward to getting to this. I really enjoyed the first book, Sugar Daddy, in this series, And like I said, I love Lisa Kleypas's writing, so I'm sure this one will be no different. I also am in the middle of the Betsy Tasty series. So I believe it was last year I read Betsy Tasty and Betsy Tasty and Tib, which are the first and second books in the Betsy Tasty series. And so now I need to read Betsy and Tasty Go Over the Big Hill. This is written by Maud Hart Lovelace. And this is like a 8-book series, I think, 8 or 9, I'm not sure, but it follows Betsy basically and her friends. The first book starts when she is 5, and then I think the second one she was 8. I'm not sure what age she'll be in the third one, but it basically follows her throughout her childhood all the way up until she gets married. I'm sure most of you probably know about this series, but yeah, I definitely need to continue on with this one. I'm also in the middle of the Reluctant Royal series by Alyssa Cole. I've read the first book, A Princess in Theory, and then one of the novellas, and this one is the second book in the series, A Duke by Default. I believe it follows the best friend from the character from the first book, and I think that she is meeting up with a Scotland lord or something. I can't remember exactly the details, but I'm really looking forward to this one. I really enjoy Alyssa Cole's writing, so I really need to progress in this series too. Earlier this year, I read Dead in the Water, which is the first in this series, and now I need to move on to Castle on the Hill. These are written by Agatha Frost and Evelyn Amber, and they follow a retired police detective who has moved to the seaside town and decided to take up art and teaching art lessons. However, she still finds herself involved in different crimes and mysteries that are happening in this small seaside town. This is a really fun, cozy mystery series, and I really enjoy the protagonist, and I would like to finish this trilogy sooner rather than later. Next is a series that I started quite some time ago. I believe it was before I started booktube, and that is the Mortal Instruments series. So I have read the first 4 books in this series, and I need to read City of Lost Souls. These are by Cassandra Clare, obviously. You probably all know what these are about, but follow a group of people called the Shadow Hunters who hunt demons, and there are a lot of supernatural beings in this series, like witches and vampires and fae, and it's an interesting series. I definitely enjoy the world. I wouldn't say it's the most well-written series, but I definitely want to see it through to the end and be able to read the series that comes after this one. I did really enjoy the Infernal Devices trilogy more than I'm enjoying this one, but like I said, I definitely want to finish this at some point so that I can move on to the other books that are in this world. Next is Tempting the Bride. This is the final book in the trilogy, the Fitzhugh family trilogy. This is by Sherry Thomas, and these are historical romance books again. This follows the Fitzhugh siblings, of which there are 3, and they each get their own book. This one is following the younger sister, and I believe in this book that she gets in a carriage accident and she loses some memory, and she doesn't remember that she actually hates the male protagonist. She ends up falling in love with him, and then I'm assuming she gets her memory back at the end, but it's going to be their journey. I really enjoy Sherry Thomas's writing. I think that she is one of the best authors I've read in historical romance genre. So yeah, I'm really hoping to read this one soon. Next I have the second in the Matchmaker Bay series. This is Paradise Cove by Jenny Holiday. The first one in the series was Mermaid Inn, and I read it back in May. My husband buddy read it with me. These take place in Moonflower Bay, which is supposed to be in Canada, but I'm not sure if that's an actual place in Canada. But anyway, the first book in the series followed a young woman who had received her aunt's bed and breakfast in her will, and she had moved back there to put it up for sale. And I don't want to spoil that book for you, but this book follows another character who lives in Moonflower Bay that you meet in the first book, and it is going to be his romance with a doctor in town. I'm really looking forward to this one because I did really enjoy Mermaid Inn. Last year I started reading the Poldark Saga, which is like a 12-book series, I believe. I received all the other books for Christmas last year, and I really need to progress in the series. It was a really great book. It's a historical fiction book that follows this Poldark family, and the second book in the series is Demelza. I feel like I shouldn't tell you who Demelza is because her storyline, it would be spoiled for you if you haven't read the first book. But anyway, this series starts out with Ross Poldark, who has just returned home from the war to find that his life has changed a lot in his absence. I really enjoyed Demelza's character in the first book, and I'm really looking forward to this one as well. Next is the second in the I Heart series by Lindsay Kelk. So the first one was I Heart New York, which was following a girl who's she had caught her fiance cheating on her, and so she runs away to New York basically just to escape and get away from everything. This one is following the same young woman who, I'm not sure why, but she ends up on a journey to Hollywood, and I'm really looking forward to following on her journey. These are just fun, lighthearted reads that are really quick and funny and fun and whimsical and easy to get through. They definitely have a bit of romance, but they also really follow her journey as a person as well. Next is Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. So I've had this book, I believe, since it came out. I don't remember when I read the first book in this series, Nevermore. Probably right when it came out too, so it's been a while. I sort of almost feel like maybe I should reread Nevermore because I do remember it, but I don't remember all of the tiny details. But I'm hoping once I start this that they will come back to me. But this is a middle grade book series, and this is following Morgan Crow, who has always been told that she was cursed. So in the first book you find out about that, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but this is just more in her journey, and I've really been looking forward to this one. I'm not sure why I haven't picked it up yet. It is quite long, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Next I have the sequel to Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and that is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the Brown Sisters series. I've actually been hearing that people are enjoying this one more than they enjoyed Chloe Brown. So that makes me really eager actually to read this one. This is a contemporary romance series, and I did enjoy Chloe Brown. It wasn't any favorite for me. It was probably like 3.5 stars. So I'm really hoping to enjoy this one even more than I enjoyed that one. Yeah. Then I have The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, the second book in the Raven cycle. Last year I started this series and I surprisingly enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and I have yet to continue on just because I have so many other things on my TBR, but maybe this will be the month that I read The Dream Thieves. I'm really interested to see how this story continues. I know a lot of people love this series and a lot of people don't really like it. I would say that Maggie Stiefvater, at least in this series, definitely has a unique writing style that I don't think everyone will enjoy. Next is the second book in the Pivot Point duology. So if I read this book, Split Second by Casey West, then I will have completed a duology. So I'm feeling like this one I should push to the top of the list. This one is set in a world where people have these special abilities and they live separated from everyone else. This particular girl is able to see into the future. Like if she's faced with a decision, then she can have two choices in mind and see into the future exactly the way those two choices would lead, so that she can make her decision based on what she has seen with her special ability. And the first book, like I said, was called Pivot Point, and it was really interesting, and it ended on sort of a cliffhanger that made me definitely want to find out what was going to happen in the next book. I should have picked this up immediately. I don't know why I didn't, but yeah, I'm definitely feeling like this one's going to happen in August. Then we have Bed of Roses by Nora Roberts. This is the second in the Bride Quartet. I think it was last year. I can't remember if it was last year or this year. I read the first one in the series. The series follows 4 friends who run a wedding planning business, And the first one was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the girls' friendships and the romantic interest that was in that one. I'm really hoping that I enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed the first one. Next is A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. This is the second in the Wayfarers science fiction series. Originally, I thought this was going to be a trilogy, but I just heard she is releasing a fourth book in this series. I'm not sure if it's this year or next year. I read the first book in this series, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, several years ago, way before I started this channel, and I loved it. And then I put off this book because I was worried that it wouldn't be as good as the first one because I loved the first one so much. This one, I believe, is following a character from the first book with an AI character. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away if you haven't read the first one. If you're into sci-fi with lots of character development and lots of different alien species, I would definitely go and check that out. It was a really great book, and I need to make this one happen. I have Undercover Bromance by Lisa K. Adams. So this is the second book. I'm not sure what this series is called, but the first one was the Bromance Book Club, which I read earlier this year and really enjoyed. It was like a marriage in trouble trope, and this one I believe is supposed to be like a romantic suspense book, and it follows the sister from the first book in the series, and I really need to get to this one. I think the third one is coming out later this year, so I need to make this happen. Then we have Siegen Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I read the first one in this series, the Grisha trilogy, at the end of last year, and I loved it. Shadow and Bone. I'm sure you know what this series is about. It's like a YA fantasy series. Normally I would have binge read this series, but I had so many other things going on at the end of last year that I just didn't finish it, and I really need to because I gotta find out what's gonna happen next. Along those same lines, I also started the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy last year, and so I need to continue on and read Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. This is another YA fantasy trilogy. I loved the first book in this series, and just like I say, normally I would have binge read this series. I don't know what was going on with me last year. I was trying to read too many things, I guess. I have been trying to work my way through the Hercule Poirot series. I have read the first three in order and then a few of the other ones out of order, but this one is the fourth book in the series, The Murder of Roger Aykroyd by Agatha Christie. I'm not sure, exactly what this mystery is going to be, but obviously it's following Hercule Poirot as he investigates another murder mystery. And yeah, I really, I know that this series has like 40 books in it, so it's going to take me quite some time to get through them all. It's definitely a goal of mine to complete over my lifetime. So, throwing one in here and there is definitely going to be helpful. Next is the Legend trilogy. This is the final book in the trilogy, Champion by Marie Lu. I obviously have already read Legend and Prodigy. This is a dystopian YA novel series, and this series was just okay for me, and that's probably why I haven't finished it yet. I honestly debated on whether or not I should just unhaul this, but I already own the full series, and they weren't terrible books. They just weren't amazing. And sometimes it's like, if I know it's going to be a 3-star, should I read it? Or should I save my time for 4 and 5 stars? But I feel like I'm committed to this. I need to finish this in August and then figure out if I'm going to unhaul this series. Hopefully the final book is going to blow me away and I'll end up loving the series. We'll see what happens. I also have the Warcross sequel by Marie Lu as well. This is Wildcard. I read Warcross, I want to say last year, but I could be wrong. This is like a YA cyberpunk type novel where they're living in the future. It's sort of dystopian, but they have tons of tech that we don't have, and it's like a video game type alternate reality, virtual reality that this main character is competing in. I was definitely intrigued by the end of the last novel. I'd say that Warcross was anything too amazing, but I definitely was intrigued by the ending enough to want to finish the duology. And then I will have another duology to check off my list. Another duology that I really need to complete is the Vengeful duology. I'm not sure what this is called, but I read Vicious, I think like 3 years ago. A whole bunch of books just fell over. I read Vicious like 3 years ago and I absolutely loved it. I had such a good time reading that book. And this is another one of those things where like I waited for this to come out and then I got it right away. But then I was kind of scared that it might not live up to Vicious, so I haven't read it yet, but I think now is finally the time. This is by V.E. Schwab. Probably already know what Vicious is about, but it is about two friends who have sort of found a way to develop superpowers, and they have gone two different paths with that knowledge. And the first one was sort of them, well, majorly butting heads, I guess you would say, about their beliefs on people with superpowers and what you should do with them. I am definitely interested to see where this novel goes, and I'm hoping that since it has been quite some time apart from Vicious for me, that maybe I won't be comparing them so much in my head and I will end up enjoying Vengeful. We'll see. Next is The 12, and this is the second book in the Passage trilogy. This is by Justin Cronin. I read The Passage last year or the year before. I can't remember. And it is like a dystopian novel that features vampires. Essentially, I don't think they're called vampires, but essentially that's what they are. Maybe a bit more than vampires, like vampires escalated. But the first book was a huge journey. It's quite a long book. It follows a multitude of characters over a very long period of time, and I am really interested to find out how the rest of this series goes. I really enjoyed the first book and I want to continue on. This one is another really long one, so I'm not sure how many of these I'm going to get through, like I said. Then I have Changeless by Gail Carriger. This is the second in the Parasol Protectorate series. I read the first book, Soulless, earlier this year. It could have been last year. I don't know why my years are running together. But this is like a steampunk Victorian set with vampires and werewolves, and it is just a lot of fun. It follows the main character whose name is Alexia. She is a character who basically can take away the powers or abilities from other supernatural beings by touching them. So if she touches a werewolf while he is transformed, then he becomes human. If she, same with vampires, you know, whatever. And it's just a really interesting, fun series. The author has a lot of wit, and she definitely has a unique writing style, and I love the first book and I'm interested in continuing on. Next I have the third book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. This is Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. I'm sure you've heard of these books as well. The series follows Audrey Rose, who in the first book wants to follow in her uncle's footsteps, who is an undertaker. Obviously, this is not something that women do in the Victorian era, so she is seen as very different. She works really hard to try and get to her dream, and I think in this book she goes to America. I'm not exactly sure what all is going to happen in this one, but the series has been a lot of fun and I've really enjoyed following Audrey Rose, and I'm looking forward to reading this one as well. It's the last one, and this is honestly the one that I am the least sure about, and it is Legacy by Shannon Messenger. So this is the 8th book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. I read the 7th book, I think it was over a year ago. I feel like I talked about it in my very first booktube video. And I have been reading this series for quite some time, you know, for a couple years now before I started my channel. And I really enjoyed most of the books up until the 7th book. And then I really did not like the 7th book. I had such strong feelings about the 7th book. But my daughter loves this series and she wants me to read the 8th one. She tells me that it's better than the 7th one, and she's adamant that I should read it. And really that's the only reason why I'm even considering it, because if it was just me, I would give up on this series. But this book it's almost 800 pages. So if I will probably read this at some point. Maybe in August. We'll see how much my daughter pressures me. It's definitely going to be a labor of love. I want to do it for her, but I'm not looking forward to this book at all. I know that's terrible. So those are the books that I am going to pile up next to my bed and work my way through as many as possible during the month of August, my end of the summer sequel, readathon, blowout, bonanza, whatever you want to call it. Let me know if you have a bunch of series that you are in the middle of. Are you good about continuing on with series, or are you like me and in the middle of so many that you don't even know how many there are anymore? You can tell this has gotten completely overwhelming. I'm surrounded by books right now on the floor. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of these, which ones you think are definitely ones that I should prioritize for August. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are all doing well. I'll see you next time.